Gentlemen, I've brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem.
It may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood show.
The Vinny Eastwood show.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need. The Vinny Eastwood show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero Radio.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and hermaphrodites. My fellow slaves of the global plantation. The Vinny Eastwood show is bad news. It's like the news, but so much worse. It's the lighter side of genocide. Just because we're being exterminated doesn't mean we can't enjoy it. Otherwise, what's the point of being killed? The Vinny Eastwood show, where the only thing worse than living in a high-tech global police state run by child trafficking Satanists is Vinny's jokes.
And welcome to another exciting episode of the Vinny Eastwood Show, broadcasting live on Kiwi Freedom Hub Radio and also, of course, the wonderful Ground Zero Radio Network out of the United States. And they are quite wonderful in the fact that they put up with me. You know, there's a lot of people who've been in this movement for a long time. And today I'd like to talk about hope, right? What is hope versus uncritical positive thinking? There is a danger to which, where if you miss out on one, if you don't have any hope, that's not good. And if you're prevailing in another, uncritical positive thinking, that's even worse. Because if we were to cauterize the wound, as it were, and try to come up with a very basic struggle, you know, somebody asked me one time, Vinny, what are we up against? Are we up against the Freemasons or the Vatican, or is it the bankers or the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or the reptilians or the Greys or the Starseed people? It was just like, well, yes, right. It's just, it's complex. All right. Have you done your 10K yet? You don't know what that means? Okay, 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours of episodes of the Vinny Eastwood show, or other people like Max Egan or the Corbett Report or Mark Passio, for instance. There's a lot of research to be done just to bring your consciousness level up to where you're capable of perceiving reality correctly. Perceiving reality correctly. This is the key phrase, my good ladies and gentlemen, between being a conspiracy theorist, which is a person who believes, absolutely believes, and they can't be convinced otherwise, that powerful people who have a lot of influence use their influence to maintain and grow that power. And the difference between that and a coincidence theorist. A coincidence theorist believes that everything happens by accident. There's no such thing as deceit, corruption, backroom deals. And at some point in the middle of the 20th century, the most elite and wealthy plutocrats, oligarchs, and members of the evilarchy, that's evil and oligarchy and malarkey, got together in a big meeting room and just said, you know, gentlemen, I think we've got enough money and power now. Let's just let everybody be free and open and transparent. You know, let's do that. Okay. If you believe this happened, then you are a coincidence theorist. Okay? And when it comes to, for example, the recent election outcome, and let's not get emotional about it. All right? This is the difference between somebody who's capable of processing information and somebody who's only capable of processing emotion. They're capable of looking at the information without the emotion overriding what they're thinking. And this isn't talking down to you, it's a process. We all suffer from this affliction from time to time when we should be thinking in black and white, but instead we're just seeing red. Have you got hope invested in the election outcome of a United States presidential election? Have you invested any hope in this? That somehow it'll solve your problems for you and push your views onto other people for you? This is not a good thing, and you should be abandoning that hope as quickly as you can possibly come up with the information to give you reason why it is not a wise move. Here's why it's not a wise move. History. His story. This is what happens. When you analyze a situation, you have to analyze it within what's known as context. The text that it is with. Things don't just happen. They come from places. They have backstories. These people have track records. So, is this going to be a show about bashing Trump? No, it's not. It's just about basically trying to keep your mind in order so that you don't get rushed away with hopium. Much like, and I'm going to admit my mistake here, back in the day when Obama in 2008 election was promising to end the illegal US wiretapping and Patriot Act that was being implemented on all Americans after 9/11, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. And end the illegal, no end in sight US wars in the Middle East. I was like, yeah, that's a good idea. The dude dropped more bombs in his first year as president than George W. Bush dropped in his entire presidency. Okay, just think about that. They tell you one thing, and it is ruled by the governing question, what is it that people want to hear? Do you want to hear all of these things? Oh, I believe my guest is actually turned up today. So today I was talking about hope and uncritical positive thinking and the difference therein, and how a lot of people are being swept away from, especially in the truth movement, with this whole rash of hope and hopium sort of thing, and just kind of reminding people that there's a history behind things, and things don't just happen, and there is conspiracy within conspiracy within conspiracy. So now that we've just wrapped that up, I'd like to introduce you to the show and let the audience know, and myself of course, a little bit about who you are, what it is you do, and what we're in for today.
All right. Well, my name's Albis Bacon, and I'm, as Vinny mentioned, I was apparently the basis for a film. I'm still yet to validate that, but apparently that's true. I'm deeply into the interreligious and eschatological studies to basically determine the end times, basically, that it would seem that we are in, at least from a biblical lens and other religious perspectives as well. I mean, we can look into it from many angles. I mean, we can look at the Yuga cycle that was endorsed by Graham Hancock on his website by an Indian researcher who regarded that the ascending Iron Yuga age would end in 2025, March equinox 2025. But that's relatively insignificant, but it's just like something to keep in mind as an extra corroborative factor, potentially. And as for the Mayan calendar ending in 2012, the kind of anticlimactic end of the Mayan calendar, what exactly did that mean? I can at least say that I've at least read in multiple places that some say that it takes about 15 years for the effects to materialize in the sense of the geopolitical, the geological effects to actually start to take place. which would equate to about 2027. But that would lead into the biblical prophecies that talks. It's the book of Daniel. It talks about a commandment to rebuild Jerusalem, and then there would be 490 years from that time. And if there's any debate over whether or not that's the correct amount of time from the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem, we already know because it happened in 457 BC already. And in 34 AD, Christ was crucified, ending the 490-year period. And in 1537, there was a commandment made by Emperor Suleiman of the Ottoman Empire. And if you count 490 years from 1537, you get 2027. And it's interesting because he was visited in a dream the night before by the prophet, whoever that was at the time. Some may have, I believe it may have been Muhammad at that time, who shook him, terribly frightening him to the bone to tell him to make this commandment to rebuild Jerusalem in 1537. And then he woke up, and the next day he literally made the commandment on the equinox. It's interesting because that was the commandment to rebuild Jerusalem, but there was a previous commandment in 1535. And 490 years from then is 2025, and it's a period of time that basically God, quote unquote, has given the people of the earth to basically sort it out before things get messy, basically. Now a key prophecy from the Quran, actually, which I recently learned about, is called the split moon prophecy. Now, it's said that in Surah 54 in the Quran, it says that when the moon shall be split in two, I paraphrase, that destructions will follow. Now, on September 29th, we got a second moon. I'm not sure if you heard about that in the media. It's essentially just a meteorite the size of a bus, but it came into our orbit, and it's regarded as a second moon because it's been in our orbit now for nearly 57 days, and it will leave on the 25th of November, and then essentially that links to basically talking about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So sometime after this event, the split moon, it will actually do a flyby in January 2025. So that's January 8th exactly, which is quite close to the inauguration. So I'm anticipating something around that time. And I'm sure we're all aware of the term order out of chaos. I'm not sure how many people are affiliated with the idea of a new world order coming soon. But I mean, with people like Elon Musk wearing Baphomet costumes and Novus Ordo Seclorum on his jacket at a recent event, there seems to be many clues leading to this new presidency being the establishment of the New World Order. With actually Trump, it's a far right fascist regime, and Trump essentially is going to be a one world dictator. This is what I believe, and I think it's quite supported, despite all the hype around this two-party system, contention around, oh, they're the bad guys, they're the good guys. I think they're both extremes, and they use each other to serve the same end of the same bird, two wings of one bird, right? Mm. So,
well, if I may, the thing that people most don't really recognize, let alone recognize the elite's value in it, is astrology, right? Astrotheology and how the movements of the stars and the planets govern behaviors here on Earth, and they plan everything, or basically anything really important in their life. They try to plan with alignments in the stars. Even, for example, 9/11, the 11th of September is known as a pagan ritual day that is noted by sacrificial burning, right? As if it was a true coincidence that the towers and all those 3,000 people got incinerated just on accident on that day. And even on the star charts, if you look back, what did the stars look like 2,000 years ago, around about the date of Jesus' birth and the Bible references and things of that nature? What was his birthday, Jesus of Nazareth? Apparently September 11th. So this is how we start to look into a sort of a deeper chasm of knowledge, what is called the morphic field. You and I, Albus, we're here in the three-dimensional universe, as up, down, left, right, depth, and front. And just above us, on the other hand, is the morphic field, where those dimensions are occurring simultaneously and in a more etheric manner, and we're capable of sending and downloading information into and from that field. So when we talk about the New World Order, which is a ubiquitous term that I think Jason Bermas's film, Fabled Enemies, I had him on the show one time, and I told him how much the first, I think it was maybe 15 to 17 minutes of that movie was just quotes from international leaders using the term New World Order. Person after person after person after person, just for 15, 17 minutes straight. It was unbelievable, the huge amount of volume of people that he gets from this. And we had, I think, one of our local politicians, he was invited to be part of the United Nations sort of gambit and go over there and attend all these meetings, where he came back to his Christian family and his Christian community going like basically red in the face, which is very difficult for a Pacific Islander, mind you. And he was saying that these people were using the terms New World Order at practically every single one of these meetings. And before this experience, he believed that everything was just like some big kind of pie in the sky sort of conspiracy theory. But when you're actually there among the people who actually run the world and you actually listen to what they're saying, it confirms true everything us quote-unquote crazy conspiracy theorists have been saying for some time. Now, when you say Trump is going to wind up being the dictator of the world, that's a pretty contentious thing to say, considering the amount of people in the quote-unquote truth movement and the right wing and the sort of element of it, the horrendous fawning that they have for this individual who used to launder money for the Jewish mafia in New York. Why do you think the man had casinos? All right, guys, what did he start his empire with? Quote, a small loan of $1 million from his daddy.
Yeah.
All right. He wrote The Art of the Deal, and he didn't actually write it. Somebody else did, and he just put his name on it and made all these sorts of terrible suggestions and things of that nature.
It doesn't surprise me.
Author came out and said that this guy's an absolute madman. The same man who was predicted by a head of narcissistic study, a guy named Dr. Sam Vaknin, who literally wrote the book and all the terms on narcissism, said that he would become president. And this was before he even so much as announced his presidency. Why did he think that? Because he believed that Trump reflected the current level of narcissism in the United States population, and that they would elect somebody to represent them and their narcissistic interests.
Very well said. I think that's spot on. I mean, are people forgetting it's Trump, like his track record? Like, are we forgetting all of that? And wouldn't that be just typical of and I believe he's described in the Bible, in the book of Daniel, as the little horn. And he's a little horn that comes up among 10. But there's multiple layers to the prophecy, I believe. It's a red dragon, and I believe that can pertain. I haven't personally worked it out precisely as to whether that could allude to the Republican Party, but I very strongly believe it does. And then I believe it's also potentially China. And this dragon has 10 horns, and the horns represent rulers of nations. And China's pushing for a coalition is interesting. And they have to be papal endorsed, and the Pope has been working with China recently and making a lot of pushes to get them on board with the Holy See. So I wouldn't be surprised at all. And the dragon gives the beast its power. If anyone's familiar with the Beast of Revelation in chapter 13, I believe it's quite demonstrable that it's a amalgamation of world powers through the United Nations. It describes them as animals. The lion is England, and the eagle's wings are America that became independent. They were plucked off from the lion and became America. The leopard is France, and Russia is the bear. And they're all the Security Council nations for the United Nations. And the dragon giving the beast its power, well, from at least what I've heard, China are funding Elon Musk in a big way, and they're economic giants, and also their technological and political regime seems to be the blueprint that the world will be adopting. So, and that I think it's pretty clear from my perspective, and I have various sources that I refer to, which I think are fairly lofty, connected to monarchical authority. But yeah, it says in the book of Daniel that a man speaking great things. Trump has always been referred to, right? Saying great, America is great, keep America great, and all that kind of thing.
Well, let's not forget his wonderful tour to Israel, where he had a big bus branded on the side of it with "Make Israel Great Again."
Right. Yeah. So when I say fascist, it's not necessarily fascist in that it's nationalistic in an American sense, but it's at least nationalistic in Israel first. It looks like the plan is to destroy America, but I mean, it's still relatively fascist, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, let's look at, for example, Congress. In Congress, where the president of Congress is speaking to all the senators or whatever it is, I forget the exact arrangement of it, but in terms of on opposite sides of the Speaker of the House right there are fasci. Fasci are a bundle of sticks wrapped around a big two-headed axe, and they are right there in the United States House of Representatives. And indeed, Abraham Lincoln, in the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., he is sitting on a big chair. What is the two fronts pillars of that chair? They are fasci. All right, this is the whole idea, to bind everybody together. A bundle of sticks is harder to break than a single stick. That's the whole idea. It's a socialist ideology. It's what's called National Socialism. This is why the Nazis and the communists were big enemies, because one of them wanted global fascism and the other one wanted national fascism, basically. But they're both fascists and they're both socialists. So
I see.
So this is when we look at, for example, the United States political parties. One of them, the Blue Party, is the Communist Party, and the other, the Red Party, is the Fascist Party. They're both socialists.
Yeah.
Whichever you elect, socialism is what ye shall get.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So there's talk about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that are to be released. To clear up any mystification on that, the red horse essentially is war. The black horse is famine. The pale horse is like sickness, and the white horse, controversially, the white horse. If you think about a white horse, the color white represents purity. It says the white horse has a bow and it goes out conquering. It doesn't say anything about an arrow. It's highly suggested, and I think it's quite clear, because in other scriptures it just mentions 3 of those elements of war, sickness, famine. So that bow is the bow of the covenant of God, like the rainbow of the sign up to the flood of Noah, how we're interpreting that. But essentially it links to a covenant. this is a key point that I wanted to touch on, because in every dispensation of God's establishment on the earth, he establishes a covenant with the people. Now, I believe this occurred most recently in the 1800s, and then in the 1900s it evolved into an actual peace treaty that was it was signed in to law on. It was 1928, as a result of the war that they wanted to outlaw war. So about 70 odd nations signed it. So war was outlawed in 1928, and the Nuremberg trials, that's what they were sentenced under, and they were charged under that law. So, and that's been swept under the rug, whatever the official term is for that. Now, I believe that's a reference to the prophetic covenant spoken of in the book of Ezekiel, which will bring peace to the earth. In an exoteric sense, I mean, there's not much point in creating peace on earth just superficially, because then it will just spiral out of control again. There needs to be an internal reflection of that peace within, profound conscious development and self-analysis and right education and everything like this. And the governing body that's behind this, the author of the covenant being Baha'u'llah, who's the founder of the Baha'i faith. Now, in the 1950s, there was a big schism, and it got a bit crazy for a while, and then the movement ended up, I believe the authentic movement ended up in America in the Rocky Mountains. And I believe there's a lot of prophecies talking about it. America is the promised land, and a lot of the discoverers, like Cook, I believe, he discovered America, right? That was Cook?
I believe it was Columbus.
Columbus, yeah. He was setting out to find the New Jerusalem and the Promised Land in the Bible and the Scriptures, and believed he had found it when he found America. And the fact that America was founded on Masonic Jewish architecture and symbolism, there's very key parallels. The 13 colonies that set up on the East Coast, it's the same pattern for the states in the Middle East, for Israel and the surrounding the lower and the higher parts of that region. There's a documentary that can validate all these things. But the thing is, with this governing body that authored this covenant that evolved into a peace treaty that's going to bring peace on the earth, it was supposed to be headed by the Davidic king. Now, it says in prophecy that David's throne would last forever. And then after Solomon went a little bit crazy and started worshipping other gods and things, in time, the Davidic throne was exiled into Persia, and then in the 1800s, Baha'u'llah, who sat on the throne of King David, I believe he was the king of kings in scripture and prophecy, fulfilled hundreds of scriptures, prophecies. So that throne continues today with his great-great-grandson, Neil Chase, despite recent contentions with me and the movement, to do with the covenant, to do with some of the core fundamental stipulations in the charter that his son laid out, who had conferred infallibility, Abdul-Baha, from the manifestation. So this person, Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, he's what's called a manifestation of God, I believe, and which is the same degree of like a Buddha or Muhammad or Jesus or any of those type of spiritual leaders. I mean, if people don't side with the interreligious connection and just want to stick with Judeo-Christian perspectives, that's fine. This is what a large part of it is covered by anyway.
Well, this is what I thought was happening with religion, is that they have what you call a core of truth and a spiral of omission rather.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that every religion has maybe 1, 2, perhaps even 8 things in common, but they've all got these little differences, right? And I remember one time somebody on my channel back in the day when I had a big channel, before I got deplatformed. Damn, reminding myself about that. Anyway, they said, Vinny, you don't know the one truth. And I go, the one truth? What is that? Water is wet, what goes up must come down. What is this one truth they're talking about? So you did, as you could do back in the day, a Google search and get a proper answer for something. And it came up with all these religious websites, all claiming to know the one truth, but all disagreeing about what it is. And I thought, what a great idea. Claim to be the only one who's genuine, slag off everybody else, get everybody balkanized and fighting with each other, even though inherently they believe much the same thing. And if they didn't have somebody telling them that their beliefs were so different, if they had somebody telling them how their beliefs are similar, they might be able to get along, they might be able to stop fighting, they might be able to start living together and negotiating and working together for what all their religions say the real enemy is. The evils of the self, the love affair with the self, as the Satanists call it. Because it's when you believe that you're totally special and you're like totally better than everybody else, and you start to think of people as the other and what have you, that eats away at your very being, at your soul kind of thing. And I think that what's happening here is that we've had a weaponized version of narcissistic training, which we call complex post-traumatic stress. That's where you will join a cult of some description. They will give you various techniques, sleep deprivation, trauma, isolation, poor nutrition, repetition of meaningless and pointless tasks, essential authority figure that must be obeyed, essential doctrine that must not be questioned, and anybody who does question it, a key ostracization of those people from the cult. Now, when I say that, if you break down those elements, that sounds like every educational institution and every business institution and every religious institution and every political organization that we currently have today. That's why it's called culture. All right?
Yeah.
Everybody's basically been traumatized by these varying forms of cults who use cult indoctrination techniques to detach their emotions, their actions, and their thoughts from each other. This is to oppose what I call congruence. There's neurons in the brain, neurons in the heart, neurons in the gut. And if you ask somebody a question, what does your head feel? What does your heart tell you? What is your gut feeling on this? And if they all say the exact same thing, you're in what I call congruence. And that's how you're supposed to be living your life, by not making compromises against yourself, by doing the right thing, just because your head, your heart, and your gut tell you what the right thing is to do at any one given moment. And if you can separate the connection between those, if you can say, no, your brain is the church, no, your heart is the congregation, no, your gut is your preacher, then you've basically abdicated people's agency. Okay? Agency is the ability to think for yourself and act for yourself of your own volition. Yeah. And I think that's what indoctrination, education, and subsequent cult ideology is really designed to do. To take this very dangerous organism made in God's image, which is vengeful and petty, but also grand and amazing, and to control that organism in such a way that its power, the power of each individual, becomes an extension of your power, the one who's controlling this organization for your ends, whatever they might be. So this is how people have basically been disarmed by the very things that they've been brought up to believe, and actually give them really good feelings. They've done studies. Have a look at anybody who's having a religious experience or anybody who's tripping balls on magic mushrooms, and the same areas of the brain light up. Okay? That's because all of these cults, it doesn't matter whether it's the medical cult, the political cult, or your favorite religion, they all have an element of truth that does resonate with you, and they try to play that up and play down all the other things.
Yeah. I mean, everybody involved in religion or spirituality, the sad thing is that the vast majority of them, as you say, all believe they have the truth, that they are the special chosen one or ones. And some of the core principles of the Baha'i faith actually are the independent investigation of truth, the harmony of science, religion, philosophy. So it's all trying to bring it all together. And the basis for the New World Order, I believe, was derived from the Baha'i faith, because Baha'u'llah authored a regime for what was called the Baha'i World Order, and and then I believe this was counterfeited, as I think all religions are counterfeited by the shadow or by the elite or whoever, corruption at the very least. It's about bringing it all together and seeing how they all interconnect, and I think also recognizing the progressional revelation in each dispensation, and not just sticking with the one that was like maybe 5,000 years old, because there's updates, there's like new downloads. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I don't think, to ignore these updates.
That seems to be one of the big criticisms I've heard about the Islamic faith, is that they've never undergone a reformation. The word of Muhammad back when he said it is the word today, right? Nobody's ever thought, hey, Muhammad, maybe raping small girls isn't really a good idea, part of our faith. No, that's reformation, that's heresy. All right, it is what it is. It cannot be what it is not. And
that's a mildly humorous conversation, Muhammad, like just that topic, and controversial and very interesting to try to get to the bottom of what exactly that was, what happened with that. But
it's something of a misnomer, I think, because Mark Passier believes that kind of a religion in and of itself is a bad thing. Like, in and of itself, it's a bad thing. And because it prevents people from having their consciousness raised. And I think David Icke said something along this lines, is that, okay, as soon as you can put a label on yourself, you're in a prison. You're right. I'm Christian. I'm Muslim. I'm Buddhist or whatever. You're in a prison, a prison that you've accepted, and you've locked the door behind you, and you've put yourself in a padded cell and what have you. No. I don't need to hear any more information. I've sussed it. Yeah,
and that shouldn't happen. True religion, you've probably heard of. You're pretty familiar with the root word of religion, meaning essentially to bind, to unite.
Religare.
Yeah, you know it better than me. But it should never become organized. Religion should never become organized and dogmatic, which even in the institution that I'm involved with, or was involved with intimately, has, I believe, started to become dogmatic. Whereas I couldn't voice, because, I don't want to knock the institution, but that they derive from the charter, from the infallible son of the founder. That's an interesting concept to go in. How does one attain infallibility? How do you get to that level of consciousness? How is this conferred upon one? But that's another topic. That they believe that from their interpretation of it, that the institution, together with the executive head, with the Davidic king at its head, and the legislative body, the believers basically, the council, that together that they're infallible. And it does talk about the institution being infallible at some point, but it explicitly states that when the universal house of justice is established, which won't happen until after World War III. So, and in the 80s and 90s, there were 20 disconfirmed prophecies that this institution made, and they still attest perfect infallibility. It's serious cognitive dissonance. I don't want to completely mock them, but I just unloaded this whole thing in a council meeting with them, and I was told that I resigned, and that I was very clear with my intentions, and now they're not responding, and I never resigned. I was just trying to correct a misunderstanding, and no one could reason against me. All I was asking for was a reasonable, mature discussion, and no one could argue. And another core point that was out was something really important in the faith, which connects primarily to the Christian prophecies, the Judaic prophecies, is a 7-year covenant. Is to do with one, there's a peace treaty. That peace treaty, anciently, similar treaties of its kind in the scriptures were celebrated every 7 years. And the reason I believe they were celebrated every 7 years was so people didn't forget. Because it's all too easy to forget these things. Once it goes out of the collective conscious awareness, it's all too easy to just slip in some new perspective, new education, and then next thing you know, people are in apostasy. They're in darkness. They don't realize what they've lost. Now, conversely, it seems quite apparent that there's a polarized 7-year covenant, because, and it proves the time we're in, because on September 18 and 19th, 2023. Prince Charles made a 7-year treaty at the United Nations to advance the Sustainable Development Goals. This looks very, very keyed into that prophecy, because it talks about a prince making a 7-year treaty. As much as there's a holy version of that covenant, there's the law of polarity. It's a Hermetic law. So it looks to me that King Charles will be the false Messiah, in the sense that he's claiming Davidic lineage, and he's basically, he would be the mouth of the lion that's attached to this beast, this United Nations amalgamated beast. The lion being, at least primarily a British symbol. It's also Judaic as well, but there's a connection there. And Donald Trump, one thing I haven't seen online or anywhere is people making a distinction between the Antichrist, which is almost a misnomer, certainly for Donald Trump, because the little horn is I believe, a separate character. And they, because the beast, it says the beast of Revelation 13 will be given a mouth speaking great things, and it will rule all nations for 42 months. That's 3.5 years. And then it says later that it will be removed from power, this little horn, or Trump. It also says in the book of Daniel, chapter 7 or 8, that he will have a look more imposing and will be more stout than his fellows. So he fits that description. He's basically built like a pro wrestler, although he looks tiny compared to his son. But he also seems to fit into the archetype of Nimrod. Nimrod was a builder of towers and cities, and he was heading an attempt at a counterfeit one world regime, and that's what Nimrod was about. And then and a person named Hud or Eber in the ancient prophecies was one that wasn't siding with the principles of this government, and he was warning people about the destruction that was going to come. Before I forget, I'll just say it's interesting because my name, interestingly, it derives back to the name Eber. So it's just an interesting comparison. And I just one day over the last few months made a cognition that Donald Trump was a Nimrod, and Nimrod and his wife ultimately had a son, and it's kind of like the archetype of Osiris and Isis, and then it says in the mythologies that Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, had a child with her son. So it was an incestuous relationship there. So I'm not sure what's going on there, but I could definitely get deeper into perspectives on what the Trump family is about, what Barron's destiny is for, linking back to a Babylonian ritual in the 1940s by L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Parsons, the founder of NASA, basically, or the grandfather of space travel and that kind of thing. But yeah, so a ritual was done to incarnate what they called the Moon Child, or was essentially a world dictator, and that was in 1946, the year Trump was born. And what exactly does L. Ron Hubbard have to do with all this? Well, Scientology, I feel, well, I sense from my research is at least going to be the head of the one world religion. It will eventually have. Apparently, they're the fastest growing religion in the world. That's what the statistics say, or that's what they're purporting anyway. And that 21 years after L. Ron Hubbard died, he said that he would return and be embodied in his return, and that return would come back and lead Scientology into basically a new world order of enlightenment and a golden age, basically, or leading in that direction. And interestingly, Barron Trump was born on the 21st year of Hubbard's death. So that's all I'll say at this point on that. I sense like Barron has some big role to play in because it's not just a one world government. It's a one world religion according to scripture, and everything is centralized under this regime. But it will end after 42 months, I believe. The Supreme Government, I think, will collapse in 2028, and I believe a provisional government will be set up. And then, believe it or not, partly by the Mormons and the Baha'is in America, and probably the Hopis, the Native Americans in the land, to restore some semblance of order so that things can sort of return to normalcy, so that the latter prophecies can be fulfilled, where we have a nuclear war killing a third of mankind in 1 hour, and then we have a meteor coming down. It's described really clearly in the scriptures, Revelation 8, and that'll be followed by a great massive earthquake, and then the earth-shifting crust. So, and this is supported by a theory by Charles Hapgood. Now, he was a scientist, and the theory was endorsed by Einstein, that the Earth would shift crust, and it does so about every 11,000 years. And the history on that is about 11,000 years ago, or is it 12,000 years ago? We had the Younger Dryas, where there was a complete just breaking up of the Earth's mantle and a shifting around of the maps. And we used to have different maps, and so somehow people have knowledge of those old maps. I don't know how, but and some might say, well, is it the end of the world or the end of an age? Because the apostles in Matthew 24 are asking Jesus, when will the end of the age be? It says, and it doesn't say end of the world. It says the end of the aeon. And in many schools of thought, an aeon is 2,000 years. So this was 34 AD when the apostles were asking Jesus on the Mount of Olives, when would his coming be in the sign of the end of the aeon? And and the end of the aeon, we know to be 2,000 years. So we're approaching that time now, 2,000 years from Christ, coming up to 2034. However, to do with this meteor, it's interesting to note that preceding the meteor and the nuclear war, it all seems to happen in quick succession. It said that Christ would return with fire. And I believe this is the sign of the Son of Man in heaven in Matthew 24. The sign of the Son of Man, it says that the earth will look up and see it, and then the earth would mourn. And I believe that sign is the meteor. It's interesting, the torrid meteor shower, something we pass by, I think, yearly. In 2032, we'll be going directly through it. So it's interesting to note that that there's a tetrad blood moon sequence starting in 2032, ending in 2033, where you have 4 blood moons over 2 years. It says that the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, and then the stars will fall from heaven. This to me could be the smaller pieces breaking off of the meteor, or the meteor shower. It says there'll be an earthquake, the earth will shake, the heavens will shake because the earth is shaking, and then there'll be a great earthquake, and then the earth will shift crust. We can already see that the axis is already going way off center. And the theory basically states that when the axis, when the earth starts to tilt more and more and more as it spins, the material beneath the mantle becomes like magma, and then the crust it starts to tip more and more and more, and then it just gives way under the weight and the heat, and then the crust tends to move about 4,000 miles. It's a particular pattern. The way it shifts, it kind of does this. So this is the northern hemisphere, and it kind of does this. It does kind of like this pattern. So apparently we're going to go northwest, roughly 4,000 miles, and then the northern hemisphere will go southeast. So some might say, how does anyone survive that? And that's another point I've looked into quite a bit. But yeah, do you have any questions or?
Well, I was thinking about this concept of the world ending, and how very regularly, I think just I'm nearly 40, and during my lifetime, I think there's been like maybe 10, maybe 12 predictions of the end of the world by very quote-unquote reputable sources and religions and things of that nature. I've had people sitting there saying the world's going to end at this date, Vinny, and they're reading out these scriptures or whatever the hell. And out of the 13 times the world ended, I'm still alive, and I can't believe I survived it. And so that I think the reason why people survive the quote-unquote end of the world is because it doesn't actually end. It never does.
Yeah, I agree.
It changes.
I agree. Yeah.
Right? And particularly, I think maybe it's a part of the reason why a lot of people are cannabinoid deficient. Cannabinoids regulate the body's systems in a sense of homeostasis. This is where the street gets the term "your homies." But the whole element of it is that you can adapt with changing circumstances if you're not cannabinoid deficient. And this is part of, I think, what most religions are lacking: the appropriate sacrament, right? And I think this is part of the cult indoctrination too. I was just thinking this morning about how some people, they consider a particular type of alcohol to be the most valuable thing in their life. I love my Bombay Sapphire, they would tell me. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, how are we on a daily basis placating ourselves from the pain that we feel by supplanting that terrible feeling with something that makes us feel good, but not the kind of thing that will continuously feel good, like self-development, right? And so maybe the whole concept of the end of the world, my friends, is merely an opportunity for each and every one of us to stop having any excuses and to stop waiting around from being an improved and better version of ourselves that wants to live our dreams in reality rather than just leave them in our head. This is what we're all here to do, to manifest something into reality. We are creator beings, and the impetus is kind of interesting, because somebody sent me a video calling me one of the originals. Right, one of those original people who's been there for a really, really long time, who helped raise their consciousness up. And he had this little clip of me talking about the tortoise and the hare. Now, the symbol of Fabian socialism is a tortoise wielding a hammer. The philosophical reason behind that is they move very, very slow, like a tortoise, and then wham! Get you with the hammer. That's how they work. Humanity, on the other hand, is the hare. We have been sleeping under a tree, thinking, oh, that tortoise will never win the race, I've got time to take a break. But we are now awakening to realize the tortoise, the New World Order itself, is almost set up. It's right near the finish line where it can install this irresistible future regime, one that nobody can escape from.
Yeah.
And we are now rushing to beat it to the finish line. And it doesn't look good because not enough people have awakened from beneath that peaceful slumber in the tree to recognize the speed with which they must change themselves and change their communities to oppose this overarching threat. Albus, thank you so much for joining us today. Do you have any more quick choice phrases? We've got about 3 minutes before we have to go here.
Okay. I mean, no doubt there's... you were just talking about the end of the world. Lost my train of thought. Quick, scram! Say my last words. Lost my train of thought. Anyway.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah, I guess to finish... Oh yeah, so this New World Order, no doubt you've heard about the Deagle population forecast for 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, this would all be on schedule, it seems. I'm not optimistic, but basically what you're saying about the consciousness of mankind, our organization skills, not very good. Somehow the elite are just completely adept at facilitation and organization. So yeah, essentially, it is interesting, just on that covenant, that one last thing on the covenant, it says in the book of Revelation that the Lamb would open and break open the 7 seals of the covenant. Now, I believe this already happened once with the pre-peace treaty covenant. There were 7 factors to be unfolded within it. This was done by a character who sort of established his mission around the 70s. And then I think prophecy repeats in cycles. Sometimes the destructions can be symbolic. Sometimes I believe they're literal. But I believe they can be survived through dimensional transcendence. Another topic. But it says that the Lamb will open the 7 seals. It is interesting. Probably another controversial reason as to why I've been excommunicated from this movement is because Kabbalistically I unraveled what these 7 seals were, I believe, Kabbalistically, esoterically, and that they relate to the chakra system or the Kundalini system in the Hindu texts. Because there are 7 sentences in the peace treaty, and I believe they align with the 7. It's called a menorah in the Jewish temple ornamental regalia. And there are 7 candlesticks or 7 lights, and these are essentially, to break it down in very simple terms, are the 7 chakras. So, and I broke all that down. So I do believe that I am at least fulfilling one of the prophecies of the Lamb of the Book of Revelation. It is quite a lofty thing to say. I do understand that, because I grab. It says in the Book of Revelation, he'll grab the covenant out of the monarch, out of the king's hand, and he'll break open the 7 seals. So and then it does say in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 1, I've always for a long time had associations with the archetype Jeremiah. It's a long story. And it says that the people of the land would come against Jeremiah and they would oppose him, but and essentially would oppose him. So yeah,
and that is
so
exactly what's happened to you of late. The amount of lands that you've been kicked off of.
Yeah. Oh, you heard about the other one.
No, I'm sorry, but that is all the time we have for today's show. Thank you, Albis, for giving us your time and attention and sharing some of that knowledge with us today. It was actually quite an interesting discussion, bro. Cheers.
I hope people take it seriously, because it's a warning to the whole earth.
Indeed. All right. Cheers, brother. We'll catch you soon.
Thank you, Vinny.
See you, mate. All right, that's Albis Bacon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so we have just a moment to go yet here. The official broadcaster has ended and we're going into a bit of overtime now. So let's just wrap it up by saying please go to the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. That's Vinny with a Y because it's the most important question. And Eastwood, like, go ahead, make my news and go ahead, start up a donation, weekly, monthly, or become a Patreon. Please try and click on that orange Become a Patreon button, and remember, if you have already donated to support the show, I would like to thank you personally. So on the homepage it says if you've already donated, click here for your special rewards and you will be able to contact me. Alright guys, so thank you so much for your time and your attention, the two spiritual currencies, and we will see you again sometime at the VinnyEastwoodShow.com.
Gentlemen, I've brought you here to discuss the Eastwood problem.
It may be necessary to penetrate the Vinny Eastwood Show.
The Vinny Eastwood Show.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Well, I've been working on a new Vinny scene. I think that might be the kind of penetration we need.
The Vinny Eastwood Show. Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Live on Ground Zero Radio.